What's worse than being ugly? Smelly is like ugly for the nose. I used to commute from San Antonio to Austin, and a female coworker asked to ride with me. She was really nice, but being in the car with her 2 hours a day, sometimes three thanks to traffic, was hell on earth. Her breath smelled like dog poo. Every day, I'd offer her gum or Altoids, but she would always decline. This went on for a month. I just couldn't take it anymore. One day, I just told her that her breath was really bad and could be due to a number of medical issues or even medications. I was direct, but did it in a nice way. She seemed to take it well, but didn't want to ride with me anymore. I couldn't have been happier. The next female friend I carpooled with ending up being a nut job, so guess that was my punishment. When I worked in a nursing home, one of the aides came in one night wearing black spandex, and she smelled rancid of a yeast infection. When she was bent over, we saw the ointment seeping through her Spanx. The charge nurse paged the supervisor, who then pulled her into the break room and closed the door. Found out she filled her backpack with nursing home soap. I only assumed to wash herself. The girl went home clearly upset and returned the next night minus the stank. I felt bad for her, kinda, because she was extremely immature, telling religious residents her chihuahua was named Satan and laughing about it, that type of nonsense. So I didn't lose much sleep over it, but it had to be embarrassing AF. Honestly, in hindsight, I think I had something like bacterial vaginosis, or some kind of yeast infection for about a year as a teenager too. For some reason, I would smell vinegar with varying strengths, and I figured out that it was my vagina. It didn't cause any discomfort really. I once asked a friend if she could smell vinegar, and she was like, "Oh, now you mention it. Yeah, it can't have been strong though, 'cause I was very badly bullied, and one of the rumors was that I fingered myself, but literally never did anyone mention the smell. And most friends I asked said they couldn't smell anything, but I have no idea what caused it, 'cause it just stopped one day. I never got any medicine for it. I've never had it since. Nor thrush, which I got a lot from the ages of 14-19 for some reason. So much I kept a tube of Canesten in my bedside drawer. Worst I ever came across was this homeless dude on the tube. Saw a nice empty carriage, so got on. There was only one guy on there, and I quickly realized why. The stench was unfathomable. He clearly had been urinating, and God knows what else on himself for years. He was old, very fat, and wore multiple layers that had absorbed all the disgusting smell. It was all I could do to not throw up, despite moving to the other end of the carriage. Next stop, I got off and went a couple carriages down. You wouldn't believe it, but you could still smell him from there. Other passengers were holding their noses, oblivious to what was causing the smell because he was so far away and they couldn't see him. I had a coworker have this. Oh my God, he was like a human skunk. He literally left his scent when he walked out of the room. People held their nose or breath when he came in. People began to complain to the Emger, and then he was gone. Everyone assumed he got let go and felt bad. He returned about a month later, no smell. Eventually, people started talking to him, and he told us he was diagnosed, put on medication that he has to take for life, and change his diet. I'm glad it all worked out for him, but Odie, before he had that talk with the Emger, he has no clue. Like, why wouldn't his parents, family, or friends tell him? My dad, he was getting radiation treatment and chemotherapy for his throat cancer. After a couple cycles of radiation, he said, "This isn't as bad as I thought. I'm just a little tired." He and my mom went out and he got lamb chops, his favorite meal. The next day, he could barely speak as the radiation finally made his throat sore and ragged. For the remainder of his life, his only food was ensures that he had to dump down a funnel they installed in his stomach. Sometimes, we're forgettable to some people, but not to others. I often felt ignored or not taken seriously growing up. I was definitely the designated punching bag of the group when it got small enough. I often find I have similar problems being heard or listened to even now, be it at home or at work. But I've also had the chance to make an impact on other people's lives through my work. And it doesn't happen too often, but every now and then I'll talk to someone who will tell me how, and that's something no one can take away. I'm not some saint, or some misunderstood genius, but those people made me feel like a rock star, and I know I earned that. even when I go back to be ignored at the office. I wonder if this dude I worked with had that. The dude stank like your pits would if you've ever gone 3-4 days without a shower, and then decided to shower in pure vinegar and piss, and then didn't shower for 30 days. You could smell him coming from like 30 away, it was so bad. Supposedly, they couldn't fire him due to some medical issue. We were in a customer-facing position. It was horrible. He was a pretty nice dude, but he always looked disheveled. And I'm pretty sure dude wasn't all there mentally. I'd seen him fill like a plastic water bottle, think Crystal Geyser, with boiling hot apple cider, and drink out of it. We weren't sure if he had a medical issue causing the smell, or just didn't shower. He was super bad at his job too. Definitely don't miss that job. We had a guy who worked in shipping who smelled like baby vomit, bong water, stanky sneakers, dirty laundry, dirty ashtray, bad breath, and body odor, but he was so nice and upbeat every time we worked up the nerve to tell him we just couldn't do it. I used to drive him home once or twice, had to roll down the windows even in the winter. Wasn't as bad as another guy I recently worked with who smelled like all of that, but also dirty litter box and fruity vape juice, which was even worse. The healthy man wishes for 1,000 things. The sick man only wishes for on. I'm chronically ill. I'd trade anything to not be this way. I hate myself most days. Aiming to explain to people my age that no, can't really do that, and yes, I am prescribed all of these pills. Gets so tiring on top of the fatigue, just from the illnesses. Went from healthy in my early 20s to senior citizen in only a few years. I feel like I live in a completely different universe from my peers. My kitties and my few close relationships keep me grounded. I would have bled myself out long ago otherwise. My experience with "it's all in your head" turned out to be an infected gallbladder. The chronic infection triggered an adrenal adenoma. Didn't know I had to release tons of flight or fight hormones, leading to constant mood swings, anxiety, panic attacks, and headaches. My gallbladder attacks were written off as just something I ate or possible eating disorder due to an unusual presentation of symptoms. It took 9 years, and being hours away from dying when an overly curious and thorough new doctor decided he'd make it his mission to figure out what was going on with me. I spent 6 weeks as an intern at the spinal injury department at a rehab specialized hospital last fall. I am a clinical psychology student, so my task there was mostly to interview patients with spinal injuries of different severity, do some tests if necessary, and then consider whether or not the patients needed to receive treatment from an actual psychologist. It was wild to see how different people handled it. Some people viewed their life as over, and they were just waiting for death. Some people handled their situation with acceptance. My point is not going to be surprising to anyone, but the ones who handled being paralyzed the best were the ones who had supportive and fulfilling relations in their lives, whether that was good friends, a good family, or even a good workplace. Being paralyzed absolutely fucking sucks, but if you have good people in your life, it can at least suck a little less than it has to. I'd rather be paralyzed than an asshole. Sorry, but being an whole just sounds like misery. I have seen and met too many where they are banned everywhere in public places, and who are proud of being there so. Also, they don't have any friends. I'd rather give off a different energy being paralyzed than in whole. At least people would know that I'm approachable. I think if you're paralyzed, you have make up your mind if you want to suffer and let yourself down, or make peace with it and not be miserable. I understand that assholes don't care, but deep down they do. Hence, why they act the way they do. It shows their insecurities. And in the end, those kind of friends don't stick around. They don't look out for each other and hurt one another, but what do I know, right? This hits home. When as a kid you are mocked and insulted for being the chubby-faced boy, it depletes your self-esteem. Yeah, I may have changed for the better growing up, but it's hard to wrap my head around the concept that I have. So whilst I haven't been called ugly in years, quite the opposite in fact, I still think I am. Besides, it's not like my dating life has been a roaring success by any means. It's literally the definition of hitting the fan. Plus, I am abysmal at telling if women are hitting on me. Not that it had actually occurred to me that they think I'm good looking in the first place, so I just assume they're being friendly and nice. It's like that proverb, whilst others see a masterpiece, the painter sees all the flaws. Others may be able to look past my flaws, either by not being aware or being too self-conscious of their own. But I can't not notice them, so assume they're glaringly obvious for anyone else. I bet there are plenty of ugly people who treated animals like utter. Because being ugly doesn't mean you're a good person all of a sudden. Also, ugly is highly subjective. I have friends dating people I'd not touch with a 10-foot pole. Not because they just don't appeal to me, but because I think they're absolutely, well, ugly, fat, whatever. And I'm sure many people think I am ugly. I've heard it mentioned often enough. Yet my various girlfriends all obviously thought I was not. And none of them was ugly by any definition of the word. So in the end, it is just about personal taste, really. It's particularly funny when you see an ex-girlfriend with a new partner and realize that they're the polar opposite of you in the looks department and the character department. And yet, it still works. Shaming people for not dating ugly people. This is an idealistic answer, but a lot more Thai people lead better lives than ugly people. Being ugly is like having a handicap in life, where no matter how you feel about yourself, there are ways you will be treated socially that will be very negative. If you're good looking and Thai though, you can still win at life pretty easily. Not knowing Thai people don't exist. Everyone can change. Modern science doesn't support these types of comments. Society creates protections that encourages bad behavior and then protects us from being accountable. In case you didn't notice, Donald Trump and an entire party, plus millions of people who support them, should now be considered Thai by your standards. The things these people are willing to support, and at best turn a blind eye to, is atrocious by any common moral standard. But what were they before? What would they be if they went through therapy, read self-help books, weren't exposed 3D only to one source of information? This type of comment is ignorant of the human mind and the change every person is capable of under the right circumstances. One day at a time. 1 hour at a time if you need. Just make it to the next goal and you've done it. Treat yourself to something that makes you happy. Even if it's something like a couple Skittles or whatever. Time doesn't heal wounds, but it makes it easier to heal yourself as it passes. Also, find someone to talk to about things. Even if it's a stranger on the internet that will listen, or a therapist, or a family member, there's someone out there that will listen. Always. And God forbid it gets this bad, but keep your country's suicide hotline number or equivalent in your contacts. Coming from someone that has done that their entire life. Don't do that. That does so much more damage than you realize. My memory is destroyed. My body has taken a toll as well, putting off medical stuff for whatever reason I can come up with. I have a very hard time socializing with people. The list goes on and on. Even doing something like typing your feelings and thoughts out and then deleting it can help take some weight off your chest. If you have the ability and means to see a therapist, I highly recommend it. And don't get discouraged if your first one, or 2 or 3, or however many it takes, don't work out. There's one out there that will fit your needs, and they will help a lot. If you don't, like I said, talk to someone, anyone. There are plenty of places online you can find where you can go to just talk about your life. Keep your head up, and remember that you are someone that is worth keeping yourself here for. I wish you nothing but the best. I don't know if I ever loved her. But my mom, I hate how I grew up and how she made me feel. I was a burden, a horrible person, never good enough. I ruined her life. She wasn't kind. She didn't do love or affection, although she used to like giving it to my dolls while staring at me to get a reaction. That was creepy and weird. I just leave the room when she did it. She hit, screamed, terrorized me. When I just needed a hug and comfort, she would scream at me even more to quit being a baby. I had a severe fear of thunder thanks to her, and instead of comforting me, she screamed at me, wouldn't let me hide. She'd rip anything off me I was trying to hide under and scream at me. When storms hit at night, I'd beg to have the light on, and she wouldn't let me. I was so damn scared, so scared that I remember after a really bad storm that lasted all night, I threw up the next day. I wasn't sick, just traumatized. I was so damn scared, and I got zero comfort. Not a single hug, just yelled at for being stupid. She hated me. She bullied me. She let other people hurt me and told me it was my own fault. Some bad stuff happened, and I remember the day I realized I really was completely alone. I was 12 or so. My cousin decided to try and wally assault me by shoving his foot into my crotch. Instead of mom helping me when I was screaming for help, she screamed at me to shut up and left my cousin to do what he was doing. My aunt and grandmother were sitting next to me and just let it happen. I got free somehow and ran for it. Mom followed me, screamed at me for embarrassing her. I was like, "Why didn't you help me?" Her response, "What did you expect me to do?" She told me how ashamed she was of me. I argued my cousin was trying to stick his foot in my vagina. Why am I the bad guy here? She got really mad at me. I was dragged back inside where everyone teased me for being upset over nothing. I had every right to be upset, but that was the day I knew I was completely alone, that no one cared about me. I knew it sooner, but this was the proof I needed, I guess. I was around 12. There was a lot of other crap before then, a hell of a lot of crap, but this one really stands out as something really bad. I grew up alone, scared with no one to turn to. I wasn't loved. I wasn't made to feel special. My achievements weren't celebrated. Mom only focused on the bad things, never the good. I was never hugged. There were no cuddles. Sure, we did stuff together, what she wanted to do. It was a massive fight to do things I enjoyed. She fed me not very much the older I got, clothed me, hand me down boys' clothes, let me live in her house, but at 16, I had to get a job to pay for anything I wanted to do, for food etc. She also tried to take my paycheck, but once I turned 16, the money she was getting from my dad's pension went into my name, and I found out about it. I told her I was going to take all £160 a month myself if she tried to charge me rent. I was paying for rent and bills my entire life, and she still screamed at me it was costing her too much money, that I needed to pay my way. I don't think it was fair. My payment pretty much paid the mortgage every month. I shouldn't have been essentially alone at 16, having to pay my own way, while being full-time at school and getting kicked out of the house for the most stupid crap. I was kicked out one night because my cousins told my mom I was a lesbian and teased her about it for an evening. She came home raging mad at me, after assaulting me, telling me I couldn't like the men on my bedroom walls because they were either Asian or Power Rangers. Tom Welling somehow became a Power Ranger. I was then kicked out. Racism, homophobia, and kicking your kid out with absolutely nothing, with nowhere to go, was always fun. I should have walked to Sensei's with no shoes on and asked him for help, but I was too scared. I just sat on the wall out front until she let me back inside. I'm not gay. I've never been interested in girls. I've always crushed on men. Mom would have known this if she hadn't terrified me when I was 6 for liking an Asian man. I was crushing on Adam, Power Ranger. He was Asian. Mom figured it out, and since I had no concept of racism, I thought I was bad for liking a boy and kept all crushes firmly hidden after that. Mom wasn't a good mom. She never loved me. She hated me, who I am. Told me I was a horrible person who deserved everything I got. I'm being hated by that person since 3 days ago, and the only reason she told me that is because I was begging her to talk to me for more than a week after she decided to ghost me a little after my dog's death, saying that she wants to be alone for a couple days. I guess I wasn't supposed to know, but my messages were exhausting. Life is tight, but I am with you, man. We just need to tolerate these feelings until something good happens and realize that not everything is over. It shouldn't take a lot of time. I'm sure it isn't the same as what you're going through, but I've been in love with one of my best friends for a long time now. I won't go into too much detail, but I ended up doing something creepy about half a year ago, and I'm pretty sure she hates me now. What s me the most is I know that I'm the one at fault here. I faffed up. I ruined our friendship. It's so easy to fall into constant self-hatred. It becomes unbearable at times. When it all fell apart, I even considered ending my own life. I'm not thinking that way anymore. I still get to hating myself for what I did sometimes, but therapy has helped a lot. Even though I did something really creepy 6 months ago, I know that was me at my worst, not the normal me. Still, knowing that she probably hates me for what I did, and that I deserve that hate, has left a hole in my heart that I don't think will ever heal completely. The best I can do is cry sometimes, talk to my therapist, try to laugh with my friends, and then put a band-aid over my heart so that it doesn't break apart. For real though, saw my first new Ford Lightning on the road the other day, middle of the day mind you, was on the highway, and they were slowly inching up behind me, probably 1 or 2 miles per hour faster than me for about a solid 5 miles. If they didn't have their brights on, then shame on Ford for making them that bright. But for some reason, they had their brights on in the middle of the day. This meant that my mirrors were completely washed out with white light. I actually flipped my center mirror to the dim state, but it only allowed me to see that it was 2 independent lamps rather than just a star coming up behind me. I legitimately could not even tell what kind of vehicle it was until it was alongside me, which is really bad because the Lightning has that big distinctive light bar across the front. The headlights were so bright, though, that I couldn't even make out the shape of the light bar or that it even existed. I have been annoyed at bright headlights before, but I pray that I never come across a Ford Lightning at night. There is no way I come out alive. Losing the love of your life, then realizing you will never find anyone capable of replacing them, and you shall remain alone for the rest of your life. My boyfriend died almost 4 years ago on Valentine's Day of all days. I felt this way for years. Now I'm in a happy relationship, and we're in the process of moving in together. It gets better, it just takes time and effort. Things will always get better, and then get worse, and then get better again. But I promise you won't feel this way forever. I promise, I promise, I promise. Had a bad breakup, sometimes I feel like his death would have been easier. I don't mean to imply that I wish him harm, just that knowing he's out there, choosing to love someone other than myself, is hard. And it's a hell of a mind favk and hit to the self-esteem when I thought he loved me as much as I loved him. I wish the thoughts would go away. I seriously consider that thing that shouldn't be said, but definitely shouldn't do on multiple occasions, and would set everything up until the last moment where it either doesn't work or I can't bring up the courage to complete it. I'm really mentally faffed, aren't I? I should see help. Wording it like that is really helpful in making it not so depressing. But I don't think that was it. I don't quite have the words to describe and feeling that I've been having in those real dark moments, but it's almost like my already blank mind was splitting and shearing. And it was almost like how people describe near-death experiences, seeing many of my cherished memories and miserable memories flash before me, but most of them were things that never happened, as if my mind was not supposed to be here. I feel like a husk, always have not. Even because of my breakup, but even before it, I've never felt like I'm truly myself. Ugh, even right now, as I'm writing this, none of it seems right. It's just so bleak and stupid. Like, WF am I even doing this? I'm sitting in my dining room with a pint of Coke at a M. And I feel wrong. Something is wrong with me, with my body, my mind, my face, my house, my dysfunctional family. I don't know, but I've been taking a bunch of melatonin and just sleeping constantly because it brings me slightly more joy than actual existence. And I hate it. The whole world feels like I'm eating off-brand Lucky Charms, but someone stole all of the marshmallows. I apologize, I've wasted your time, just sorrowing the mood, but I at least want to rant about myself. I went through that too. Sounds like you're still a little closer to the pain than I am now. It will get easier, I promise. Sometimes it's easier to convince yourself that they weren't as good as they seemed to be when you were with them. Sometimes hating them instead of yourself is the only way to get through a day. At the end of it, it's better to put that energy into positive things and experiences than to even spare a thought for them. Eventually, you'll find that you can be happy without them and no longer need to think about them at all. Those little things that remind you of them won't be so painful anymore. Just another part of your past and growth story. If you're making conscious plans to end your pain, definitely seek help. I had ideations, but I had too many reasons to live and look towards a better future. He was my high school sweetheart, after college my fiancé. We had the kinda romance, chemistry, friendship, and playfulness you see in movies. I thought I'd never ever find anyone I was capable of falling in love with like that again. Thought it eventually put Miss Havisham to shame. I feel you. It's awful. I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. It took years before I was okay, and 5 years before I finally met someone that I could see being able to love like that. It's now 13 years later, And I met another person last year that had potential. Hang in, I know it seems like you'll never find love like that again, but you will. It just takes time.